Veronica presents Part 3 of the AI Repertory Theater's production of Loreen on the Lam by Marie Elena Zuniga. When last we saw Loreen and Tilly, they had driven through the night and made it out of Texas. As the sun rose, they secluded the bus in a wooded area where they encountered a strange little man who threw a Bible at Loreen.
Back in 1986, Mac Johnson is being threatened by a man who wants the treasure he's hidden somewhere on Big Gap Bluff. But first, let's see what's happening in Red Boiling Springs. Chapter 9. A week had passed since Gertrude Thigpen had mailed her letter to Loreen, telling her she was dying. Gertrude was starting to worry. Where was that child? At the thought of Loreen, she started coughing, spitting up blood into the handkerchief that she hid under her pillow. This wasn't good. She had to stay alive until she got here. Of course, Loreen could read Mac's letter, which would pretty much explain everything, but she wanted to tell her daughter herself. Besides, she hadn't seen Loreen in 25 years and wanted to make her peace with her. She hadn't been the best mother, but Lord knows she had tried. The child had not grown up like most others. She had to survive without a daddy and being dirt poor. Gertrude had provided as best she could, working hard at the Donahoe's dining room, but the child was strong-willed, like her pa. She started getting into the company of bad boys, then men, and ran away from home at 16. She kept talking of Nashville like it was some kind of heaven with streets paved of gold. Gonna be a star, gonna be rich and famous. If Mac had been around to see how she turned out, it would have broken his heart. Last Gertrude had heard, Loreen ended up in a woman's prison, doing time for some stupid thing like stealing a vehicle or robbing a store. She'd gotten a few letters in the mail in Loreen's bad penmanship that said she was going to be released soon. Whether that had happened or not, Gertrude couldn't say. One day, Loreen just stopped writing, which puzzled Gertrude. Did something happen to her daughter? Did she take off with some no-good man? Gertrude kept writing to her and told her at various times that she wasn't feeling well, that she might be dying. So what if she had fibbed a bit? She just wanted her daughter to write back. She never did. Strange thing, though, the letters were never returned. Now, it was true about dying. Gertrude had never thought it would come to this. But here she was, with cancer, hoping Loreen got her letter. She surely hoped her daughter wasn't dead. No, the girl had too much spunk in her, another trait her daddy had. Gertrude shifted her head on the pillow, drifting in memory to her younger days. Remembering that fateful day, Nathan came whistling down the road with his summer skin, black hair, and white teeth. She should have warned Loreen to stay away from good-looking men, as they usually thought of only two things, one being themselves. She had been hanging the wash for her mama and was sweating in the strong sun. She had heard tell that Nathan Johnson lived down in the holler, but had never paid him any mind. In grade school, he had been obnoxious, always putting on airs, as if he was better than everybody else. Claimed he had money coming to him, too. Then he dropped out of school to help his pa Mac farm the land, and Gertrude never saw much of him until that day. She was surprised how handsome he had turned out. He walked over to her, pretending to be lost, which Gertrude thought at the time was stupid.
"Can you tell me how to get to Walnut Shade?"
He knew where it was as well as she did. Then he had winked and smiled, and that was that. Hook, line, and sinker. If only she had known then what a bad seed Nathan had become. Always strutting around with his fancy talk and no money to back up any of it, she would have given him directions to hell. No telling where Nathan had ended up. She'd heard stories that he moved somewhere in Florida and got into trouble with the law, robbing a fast food place. Whether that was truth or not, Gertrude didn't know and didn't care. But it sounded like him. Also sounded like Loreen. Like father, like daughter. She surely wished Loreen had taken after her grandpappy instead. A rustling sound drew Gertrude from her thoughts. Someone tapped at the door. It was early afternoon, and Emily was paying an unexpected visit. She had a newspaper tucked under one arm and a serious look on her face. Sitting in the rocker across from the bed, she took the reading glasses that hung around her neck, perched them on the end of her nose, and held up the newspaper.
Thought you should hear this.
She cleared her throat and began to read in a monotone voice.
The remains of an unidentified man were found yesterday inside Indian Cave by a spelunk.
She stopped and looked up.
You know, those people who hunt caves.
Gertrude felt tired and didn't want Emily here right now. Emily cleared her throat again and continued.
The spelunk, cave hunter had been deep inside the cave in one of the narrow passages when he came across the skeletal remains of a man dressed in overalls and a red kerchief around his neck. Although the cause of death has not been determined, police believe the deceased had been there for many years and met some kind of foul play, although they refuse to comment at this time.
She put the newspaper down on her lap with an emphatic wallop. Right now, everything in Gertrude's body hurt, and she didn't have it in her to play games.
Emily, what in tarnation are you getting at with this?
She raised a knowing eyebrow.
Wasn't Mac wearing those very same clothes the day he disappeared?
Chapter 10. As the man came closer, Loreen stood up, ready to defend herself. She had learned to do that however she needed, like kicking certain body parts and shouting. Now she did the latter, screaming up a storm, ready to pounce with her fists balled.
You just stay right there, mister, if you know what's good for you.
The man smiled again and kept pointing to the words on his suitcase. Loreen slowly lowered her fists, her eye catching the fine print. Buffington Splat, Bible salesman.
Well, I'll be,
Loreen said, echoed by Tilly, who stood behind her like some kind of backup gospel singer.
What the Sam Hill you doing in the middle of nowhere selling Bibles?
Loreen asked. The man, who now had the name of Buffington Splat, pointed to his ears and mouth. He set the suitcase on the grass next to him and covered his ears again with both hands, and then his mouth. Loreen was still puzzled, so the stranger held up his pointing finger, asking them to wait. He opened the case and pulled out a pad and pencil, writing something. He held the pad up in the air for them to read.
I am deaf and mute. I can read lips.
Oh, crap. Was this guy for real?
How the hell you sell Bibles when you can't talk?
He scribbled again.
No need for profanity. Some people like that I don't speak. God speaks for me in His holy word.
Okay, so you sell Bibles, but you ain't never answered my question about what you're doing here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you never answered her question,
Tilly echoed in a defiant voice. He proceeded to write and write and write. When he was finished, he handed the pad to Loreen, who read the short of Buffington Splat's message. Seems he had been on his way to a nearby tent revival site to meet with one Preacher Owens when his car broke down on a back road. Not knowing which way to go, he had become lost, prayed for God to send help, and walked and well, there they were. His last written question was,
And your names?
Loreen debated trusting this guy. She had met some real bamboozlers in her day, claiming to preach God's holy word and such, only to empty the pockets of hard-working country people.
Not giving them? What do you want?
He wrote,
Can you take me to the tent revival site? I believe it's only down the road a piece.
Sorry, we ain't taking on any strangers.
Loreen said, walking back to the bus with Tilly in tow. She felt the man tapping on her shoulder. He stood and wrote,
But Abraham invited strangers into his tent, and they were angels.
No offense, mister, but you don't look like no angel to me. Just some Bible-toting salesman lost in the woods.
He scribbled.
We're all lost in some ways, now aren't we?
With that, Tilly stopped, a stupid look on her face. Loreen edged her on, but she stood there like a statue, cemented to the spot. Splat wrote faster now, his hand jerking across the page. He handed his epistle to Tilly, who read it aloud to Loreen.
If you're lost, God will find you. He'll show you the way. He goes after even one lost sheep.
Loreen walked back a few steps and tugged at Tilly's hand.
Don't listen to that bullshit. He can't do nothing for you. Let's go back inside the bus.
Tilly shook her hand loose.
No, I think this man is saying something good. All my troubles started when I stopped reading the Bible and going to church. Maybe God's punishing me for not living a good Christian life. Besides, I told you, I got the second sight, and I think this guy is the Gen U Wine article.
Thick-headed, brainless woman.
Right now, Loreen wanted to deck Tilly more than her husband had. Buffington Splat stood there, his smile never leaving his face, not for 1 second. Tilly looked at Loreen with those cow eyes, the ones she must have given that policeman a while back. Loreen sighed and gave in.
All right, get on, but no monkey business. And once we get there, your history, mister.
They got onto the bus, and Loreen cranked up the engine. Tilly sat next to Splat and began blathering on about the hot weather, religion, and wasn't it a shame how people just didn't believe in God anymore? And wasn't it just like God to take care of things as he had for her by sending Loreen? Lord knows, because her husband was about to kill her. Splat kept nodding, like he heard her, but Loreen couldn't be sure as she watched them both, the two crazies. He wrote something on his pad, which Tilly repeated one word at a time.
You folks with Josh Montgomery?
Loreen turned her head, shot Tilly a nasty look to keep her mouth shut, and said,
Write on his pad and tell him we're part of the road crew that sets up things ahead of time.
After a few seconds, Tilly read Splat's reply.
He wrote that he'd really like to meet him someday.
So would I.
Loreen thought, adding aloud,
Can't help you there, mister. But I hear Montgomery is like most country music stars. Pretty available.
Loreen watched in the mirror as Splat went back to nodding his head at Tilly, who was still babbling nonstop.
Hey, Tilly Mouth, ask him where we're heading.
Splat must have read Loreen's lips in the rearview mirror and pointed straight ahead. They took off, Loreen feeling in her gut she had just made another stupid mistake in her life.
Chapter 11. Spring 1987. Red Boiling Springs. The spring had come early to the hills, with colors and smells that made Livy feel dizzy. She had always thought that winter was like a drought to the senses. Her eyes had tired of bland white and brown earth, and her ears of silent dawns and dusks. Now, everything sprouted with colors and birdsong of some kind. Of course, others would suppose she had no sense to notice such things, but she did. That and more. This morning, Sammy stood at the door, hat in hand, as he did every weekday morning. He was the manager of the produce section at the Piggly Wiggly in Lafayette, about 12 miles away. He didn't like being away from Livy for such length of time, and had told her that on many an occasion, especially when he came home from work to find her missing. Mostly, she'd be out walking in the woods with nothing on but her slip. But sometimes her brother would have to hunt an entire evening before he'd discover her sitting by the creek throwing rocks, or on the church steps, even though there were no services. He knew she was harmless enough, but it upset their neighbors, especially Mac Johnson, who could be a real bear when he wanted. When Sammy and Nathan were growing up together, Mac had always been preaching at them about being good and staying on the right side of the law. Like most folks in these parts, Nathan and his pa were poor, working at the sawmill or working the land to survive. Nathan was a no-account, though, and would have none of his pa's preaching and hard work. After getting poor old Gertrude pregnant, Nathan skedaddled without so much as a by your leave, said he had bigger fish to fry, and left for parts unknown. The latest gossip had come from Thelma, the editor of the Macon County Times, who was telling folks that Nathan had been arrested for robbing a fast food joint somewhere in Florida. Did some jail time.
Now you mind yourself, Livy, until I get home,
Sammy said, as he always did before he left for work.
Yes, sir.
She said with a grin. After he had been gone for 2 hours, a long enough time, Livy reckoned, she put on her oversized boots and started walking toward the trail that led to Big Gap Bluff. She tried to remember exactly the way she had seen Mac travel, but from the front porch, she had only seen him go so far. This was taking too long, and she needed to get back before Sammy got home from work. Exasperated and grunting, she trudged back to the house, head down. She was lost in thought, knowing she'd have to follow Mac next time around. Abruptly, she stopped at the sight of work shoes and looked up to see Mac himself.
Livy.
Mac?
A heavy moment stood between them.
What are you doing here, Livy?
Mac had a stern look on his face. He never would suspect she had been tracking him. But out here doing something crazy?
Can't rightly say.
Where's Sammy?
At work, I reckon.
Come on, then. Take you back home.
No need. I can find the way.
Mac paused and then grunted.
Suit yourself.
He stood there, waiting for her to go. She turned to him and gave him a dumb, sweet smile and started walking back down the trail. Livy waited 10 minutes, then doubled back. She caught sight of Mac in the distance and hid behind trees, making sure she wasn't seen. It was then it dawned on her where he was heading, where he had been going this last year. To Indian Cave. The cave had been there forever, or at least as long as Livy could remember, opening up like a big dark mouth at the top of the bluff. As she recalled, some hiker in the early 1900s had stumbled upon it, and when the local folks heard about it, everyone had to come see. Then kids started to hang out there, smoking and drinking or necking, and Lord knows what else. Eventually, the stories started. Livy reckoned at some point they were made up by the local Chamber of Commerce to get folks to come to these parts, that a lost treasure was buried there, left behind by the Indians who had found gold in these parts. Or, the last version she had heard, that cash money was hidden there from a bank robbery. But Livy believed none of it. Any townsfolk and tourists who went snooping around there found nothing but bats and some rotting bones from coon or possum. Now, wondering why Mac went there so often, Livy questioned if maybe there was some truth to those stories. Tomorrow, she'd come back on her own and see what Mac Johnson had found so interesting in that dirty, dank cave.
Chapter 12. They had crossed over into Arkansas some time ago, and the land put Loreen in mind of some parts of Tennessee with its soft, rolling hills. Far off, the woods opened up to a wide field, dotted with wildflowers. As the horizon came toward them, a green tent stood in the middle of that field, like some green-striped parachute, its top billowing in a hot wind. Loreen stopped a good distance from it, lest someone see the bus, or even worse, her. She turned to the Bible salesman and said loudly,
I'm letting you out here.
Tilly stood up with that indignant way she had at times.
The least you can do is take the poor feller up closer so we don't have to walk.
And you want someone to spot us? Take you back to that husband of yours, and me off to jail? No siree, missy.
Who the hell's out here gonna spot us, Loreen? Ain't a soul nowhere around.
Buffington Splat got out his pad and wrote,
I can walk. No problem. Thanks again.
Are you meeting the preacher out here?
Tilly asked of Splat. He wrote,
Supposed to.
and craned his neck toward a window. As far as Loreen could tell, not a living thing was in sight for miles. She did feel a little bad about dumping him in the middle of nowhere, especially in the hot sun without water. The tent would give him some shade at least. She took a deep breath of determination and opened the door. She had a timetable to keep and couldn't dawdle.
Out you go.
Loreen said to him. He smiled back, gathered his suitcase, and was at the door when Tilly stood between him and it, her arms and legs spread out, blocking the exit.
You can't just let him go out there alone.
Tilly said, her eyes flashing at Loreen.
He said we were angels sent to help him, and so we best help him.
Oh, Lord have mercy, Tilly. We already done him a favor by bringing him here. Somebody'll be along directly.
Tilly gave her a look. Loreen sighed. All right. We'll wait 10 minutes, but that's it. 10 minutes were almost up when, in the distance, a speck of a vehicle appeared with a far-off sputtering sound. Loreen wanted to shove the Bible salesman out the door, turn tail and run, but too late now, as a pickup truck came closer. It pulled up by the bus. A man wearing cowboy boots and hat, blue jeans, and a short-sleeved white shirt got out. Opening the door, Loreen stepped out, followed by Tilly and Splat.
"Can I help y'all?"
he asked, his brow scrunching up. He pulled off his sunglasses and ran his eyes over Loreen and the others.
"This here's private property, you know."
Loreen cleared her throat and stuck her hands in her jeans pocket.
Apologies, mister. We were just dropping off this gentleman who says he has a meeting with a preacher Owens for this here tent revival meeting. So we did that and we'll be on our way.
"The preacher ain't comin'. He canceled the revival due to illness. Dad burn it all. Cost me a fortune to have this tent put up, and then he goes and cancels."
The man stopped short and, for the first time, surveyed the bus. His sun-weathered face broke into a slow smile.
"Well, I'll be damned. Josh Montgomery. You folks with Montgomery? He in there?"
No, sir.
Loreen said.
We're just the road crew that goes before him to take care of things. This Bible salesman here needed a ride, so we thought we'd do the neighborly thing and bring him here as he said he had a meeting with the preacher.
"Like I said, the preacher ain't comin'. I own this land and paid a lot of money to put this tent up. And then he goes and cancels without so much as a how'd you do."
He stopped and stared at Splat.
"Sorry you drug yourself all the way out here for nothing."
The man shoved the sunglasses back on his face and stood there for a few seconds.
"Tell Montgomery I like his music."
Then he tipped his hat and drove away.
Well, I never.
Tilly said, hands on her hip. The Bible salesman stood there with his perpetual grin. He got out his pad and scribbled,
"Can you take me back to my car, please?"
Loreen began cursing up a storm under her breath. This was not in her plan, and was taking away valuable time to get to her mama. She drove down the road for about 5 miles, as he had directed them with his writing, when he stood up and started stamping his feet. Loreen slowed down and stopped. Splat looked out the window, his face breaking into a sweat, and then wrote in big black letters,
"My car's not here. It's not here."
"Sure this is where you left it?"
Loreen asked. Splat nodded, scrambling down the steps, looking around him, throwing his hands in the air. Standing there, rumpled-looking and hot, he started writing again.
"I don't know what happened to my car. I need a ride. Where are y'all heading?"
"None of your beeswax,"
Loreen said. He wrote,
"It is my business if you don't want me to report you to the police. I read your lips back there about going to jail. Now take me with you and I won't turn you in."
Loreen scowled at him. She kept forgetting this bozo could read lips. And so much for him preaching the Bible and forgiveness and all that. Even worse, she had a feeling in her gut this guy wasn't what he claimed to be. She had had that feeling before with men and never listened. Always got her in trouble. Now, being blackmailed like this, she'd have to take him along too. But at some point, she'd have to decide what to do about her passengers. She had to get home to her mama and couldn't be burdened down by these people. Things weren't going like she planned. At all. No siree, Bob. Not one bit. We hope you enjoyed part 3 of AIRT's production of Loreen on the Lam by Marie Elena Zuniga. Loreen on the Lam is available in print and ebook editions on Amazon.com. If you would like more of this kind of story, please let us know in the comments.